in my little workshop. There are always a few things most people would toss straight into the trash: an old AA battery and a couple of well-used screws. But sometimes, the most ordinary items become interesting when you put them together. With a bit of curiosity and a few minutes of tinkering, these simple pieces can actually turn into a small homemade soldering device. It may sound surprising, but some of the most useful tools are often born from the most ordinary things. I just finished making the negative metal tip of the homemade soldering device from an old screw. Now it's time to add a handle so it's easier and safer to hold. For that, I'll use a simple wooden pencil, turning it into a practical handle for this little tool. Once the parts are assembled, the next step is connecting the electrical wires to complete the device. Simply attach the wire from the power source to the metal tip made from the screw and secure everything firmly. Once the parts are assembled, the next step is connecting the electrical wires to complete the device. Simply attach the wire from the power source to the metal tip made from the screw and secure everything firmly. Before using the device, there's one small but important step. Cover any exposed electrical joints with electrical tape. A few neat wraps around the connection can prevent short circuits, reduce the risk of electric leakage, and make the tool safer to handle. In a simple DIY project like this, a proper layer of electrical tape can make all the difference between something that merely works and something that works safely. This is an alligator clip, a small but very useful accessory in electrical and DIY projects. With its spring-loaded metal jaws, it can quickly clamp onto wires or metal contact points. That makes temporary electrical connections much easier and more convenient, especially when testing or assembling small homemade devices. This brush handle will be repurposed as a handle for the homemade soldering device. With this motorcycle valve stem, I'll attach it to the handle and use it to hold the homemade soldering tip in place. The small metal piece is sturdy enough to act as a clamp, keeping the tip properly positioned. It's a simple detail, but it helps make the whole device feel much more solid and practical. Inside an old AA battery, there's a small detail many people overlook: the carbon rod located at the center of the battery. This carbon core has good heat resistance and stable electrical conductivity, which makes it surprisingly useful for crafting a simple homemade soldering tip. By carefully removing the rod, cleaning it, and fixing it at the end of the device, it can serve as a compact tip capable of transferring heat to the soldering point. Before finishing the homemade soldering tip, I'll cut the metal casing from the old AA battery into small pieces and place them in a glass cup. There's a good reason for that. The casing often contains zinc, and when it reacts with a mild acid, it can form a simple soldering flux solution. This solution helps clean the metal surface and allows solder to flow and bond more effectively during the soldering process. What looks like scrap metal can actually serve a practical role in preparing a better solder joint. The final ingredient for the soldering flux solution is toilet bowl cleaner. When this liquid comes into contact with the metal casing of the AA battery, it reacts with the outer metal layer and forms a solution that can help clean metal surfaces. This cleaning action removes oxidation, allowing solder to flow more smoothly and bond better to the joint. So the homemade soldering tip is now finished. Next, I'll install it in the proper position on the handle, securing it firmly so it stays stable during use. Once the mechanical part is in place, the next step will be connecting the electrical wires, linking the power source to the tip so the device can operate. I'll use this spare battery from a cordless drill as a power source for the homemade soldering device. This type of battery can deliver a steady and suitable amount of current, which is enough to heat the soldering tip for short tasks. That makes the tool more compact and convenient without needing a bulky power supply. When the positive and negative terminals touch, you can see a small electric arc, which means the device is working. So I'll run a few simple tests so you can see how effective it is. Watch closely. And just like that, from an old screw, a used AA battery, and a few everyday items, we built a homemade soldering device that actually works. It may not be as powerful as a professional tool, but it shows that with a little creativity and patience, things that seem like scrap can still become something useful. If you found this experiment interesting, stay tuned for more unique DIY ideas.